Keeping all of the checks, reconcile differences. Keeping all of the checks, reconcile differences. Keeping all of the checks, reconcile.
Hello and welcome to the Truth Reveal podcast, where we host conversations that relate in order to reconcile as we uncover God's truth. I am your host today, Holly Harris, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Patricia Pete.
Lord, y'all don't never do that on the key that you say. Well, today we have an exciting episode, one that was promised to you all. It's the second part of our series, Dating and the Church. If you heard our first episode, you heard that we had a lot of questions that came up as it related to the men, because we just want to know, do men feel the same way that we do, or what their experience is as it relates to dating and the church? So we did what we promised we would do. We got some men on the call today, and we're so excited to have them on the call and to impart their wisdom and to, just continue this conversation. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start off. We do have one other guest that's going to come and join us a little bit later on. So when he pops up, we'll introduce him and insert him into the conversation as well. But we're just going to start by going around, and we just want you guys just to introduce yourself, to tell us what you do for a living, and just to tell us a little bit about yourself as it relates to, what your status is, whether you're single, engaged, divorced, married, whatever. So we're going to start with Torre, if you can just kind of.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Torre. I work as a teacher. I teach elementary school with special education children. And for me, I am recently back single again. I was engaged to be married, and that we decided not to go through with that back in January. So I'm single and mingling. Um, but I'm doing a lot of just growing and developing personally business, and I'm just a fun nerd. I'm a preacher, I'm a minister, but I'm a nerd. I'm a fun nerd and an aspiring businessman.
Awesome. Okay. Jonathan.
Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan McFadden. I am a senior content strategist at a company called Lending Tree. That basically means that I write marketing content for the company. I'm a writer by trade. I'm also the owner and founder of John Writes, which is a content writing and brand storytelling business. I'm currently engaged to the wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous, magnificent Yvonne Shavir Pringle.
Yay!
And in a few months, we'll be walking down the aisle. And so I'm very, very excited. God is good.
Amen.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, we'll get started with the first question. And like I said, as the third gentleman comes in, we'll kind of introduce him and kind of get him caught up, with the whole conversation. But when we were talking, in our first episode, we were talking about, just how it is for us as women when it comes to the pressures that we feel to get married. And so I just wanted to bring this first question and just see if it's the same for you guys. As an older Christian male, do you feel pressure to get married, whether it be by society or by your family? And I'm going to start with Torre on this question.
I would not say that I feel pressure by society. Because I'm kind of my own person with that. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. But it was kind of interesting family wise. It kind of goes up and down with my family. My mom and dad don't really pressure me at all, but I had a couple conversations with my grandmother. Last year sometime I had a few conversations. Grandma was, oh yes, your brother is married. And we just waiting on you. We just wait. Okay. Well, thank you for waiting, Grandma. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay. Got you. Okay.
yeah.
Jonathan, what's your
Uh,
experience?
it's interesting. I almost feel like it's almost the opposite. Um, so my family, at least openly, never
Mm.
pressured me.
Okay.
Because like Teray, I'm pretty much of an individual and kind of made up in my mind early that marriage is not something to be taken lightly. So I wasn't gonna just
Mm,
jump into it. I'm like, listen, I, I'll be honest with y'all. Like in my early 20s, I was a bit of a commitment phobe because the idea of marriage was like, wow, that's the rest of your life. Like, dang.
mm-hmm.
Um, but and then I'm just thinking, you just think about the high divorce rate in the church, and you think about just stories from friends and family members who you've seen. You saw them get together, and then something happens, and years later they split. But I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is this societal expectation that by the age of 30, you need to have this, and that, which is ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, who is society to tell me what I need to have by a certain age?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think there was some of that just because a lot of people around me were getting married in their early to mid 20s. And there was a point where I was like, oh, is there something wrong with me? Should I be on this? Because I don't feel the same urge necessarily as they do. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, over time, you kind of just continue to grow and you become more confident in who you are as a person. And I'm sure we'll get to this later, but I started to really enjoy being single, which I think
Right.
prepared me for this season that I'm in now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, see, it's interesting to hear that because I didn't think you guys probably experienced any pressure, because coming
Mhm.
from the woman's perspective, we always get, whether it's
Right.
from family or
Right.
society, it's constantly, drilled into us as it relates to marriage. And if you're not married by a certain time, you're looked at
Hmm.
in a certain way. So, yeah,
Right.
that was really interesting to hear you guys say that. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
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 And I mean, and it can. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go
It
ahead,
could.
Tori. Yeah.
It's also interesting because as is being said, the other thing that we take into consideration are all of the folks around us that are doing
Mhm.
it as well. So indirectly, that is, depending on if your best friends. A lot of my best friends that are guys have already made that move. So
Mm.
it may not be directly, but indirectly, it that does kind of weigh in. Sometimes you do think about it, like, okay, man, everybody taking that walk. Okay, when we gonna
I
yeah.
got
Can I
you.
add something? Or what? No, no, no. Was Jonathan going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to quickly
Yes.
talk about how, from, I guess the difference between men and women is that for women, from the time you're little girls, you are almost
Mhm.
groomed in a way to
Mhm.
prepare for a man.
Mhm. Right.
And so you are like socialized from Barbie dolls. You're planning Barbie's if you play with Barbie dolls, you have Barbie's wedding, and like all this
Mhm.
media is just hitting you constantly. Get married, get married, get
Right.
married. That's the sum total of your life's goal is to get married, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think with men it's different. We're not necessarily
Mhm.
socialized so heavily in that way or propagandized in that way. But I
Mhm.
think, like
Mhm.
Tori was saying, you get to a certain point as an adult man that
Right.
everybody around you is starting to do it, and you're like, okay, this is what men do now. It's like this,
Right.
you go and get a family, and it's like this is okay.
Right.
I should be starting to think about these things.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
What I was going to ask the men was, okay, I know the difference in pressure when it comes to male and female because how we're groomed, societal, and even what Teray said about the unspoken pressure and seeing your peer group and where they're at in their lives. But do y'all have any? Okay, I'm putting this for myself and for other women. Sometimes our pressure or even what we put on ourselves to be like, man, we ain't married yet, is having kids. Or why we even
Mhm.
desire it is because, well, from the Christian worldview, I never
Mhm.
wanted to be a baby mama, but I always wanted to be a mother. And so
Right.
my part of my desire for marriage was because I wanted to be a mom. Do men even think about that as far as like, okay, I don't want to be and now it's different for y'all because y'all don't have that time clock. Y'all can be a father at 60 as long as your body allows. But as far as like thinking, how old do you want to be having your children? Like, does that play any part? Whoever wants to go
Sure.
with that first.
You want it, Jonathan?
Sure.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants it.
Yeah. I think speaking personally, it definitely plays a part because even though biologically we can still make children up until we're 60 or 70, even, who I kind of think about it this way. I don't want to be nobody's 75-year-old dad showing up at the PTO meeting,
Right.
because if you have a kid that late in life, there are certain things you may not be able to experience with your child. Like if you want to be a little more active or hands-on, that you could if you had done it when you were younger. Now, I don't think that should be the sole reason you should go out and start making babies.
Right.
Absolutely not. That's irresponsible. But it plays a factor in my life. I'm gonna be 30 this
Right.
year, and even that is like, okay, so I'm 30. Let's say, God willing, we wait about 2-3 years. I'll be 33 by the time I have my first kid. I'll be 43 when they're 10. It's like you think about those kind of things. It's like, will I feel like throwing a ball? Will I feel like running outside? Will I feel like going to the museum? Will I feel like doing all that? I don't know.
Right.
That's why I'm working out, trying to stay,
You'll be
spry.
all right.
Yeah, and I concur because I'm 10 years your senior. So one of the hardest things about the decision I just made was that I'm 40, and it is a real desire for me. It's always been to be a good husband and to be a good father, and so with some of the choices that I recently had in the opportunity that I had. It was a big deal. That part of it was a big deal to kind of be right here at 40, right here at a place where I'm ready to make that move, ready to settle down and start doing this, that, or the third, and to look at the situation and say, okay, even though I'm ready, this is not right. And so that was, as a man that is a good man and a man that really desires that portion in life, that was a really hard decision to make. And even though it was the right decision, it wasn't necessarily the easiest decision for some of those reasons.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This question kind of piggybacks off the first one I asked you guys. Do you feel or have you felt a responsibility to prepare for marriage? And what has that journey looked like for you? So whoever wants to start first.
I'll go ahead and take it.
Okay.
Absolutely, I'd say yeah. And I'm sorry. Is it my AirPods causing the feedback? Do you guys still hear feedback? I'm sorry.
I do. I'm not sure. Do you have ones that are that have a cord or
No.
you don't? Well, hey, we just gonna have to make it do what it do then.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so
No
sorry.
problem.
Sorry about that. That was I digress. But I'd say yeah. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, my season of singleness, so to speak, was a very, very important time in my life. I don't think I would have made it to the point where I was ready to drop on one knee if I had not really gone through that time. Now, for me, it wasn't incredibly long because between my last relationship and starting to court Yvonne was about a year and a half, 2 years. Not too lengthy, but still a good time where I was really focused. I was like, it's me and Jesus, and I was so content. Y'all, let me tell you, I had made up in my mind, oh, maybe marriage just isn't for me. I'm cool. Like I was good. I can go where I want when I want. I could do what I want when I want. I could hang out with who I wanted when I wanted. I didn't have to consult anybody. I was like A-okay. I didn't like talking on the phone anyway, so I'm like, I don't have to talk on the phone to nobody. Like, it was a blessing. It was a blessing. And then in walks Yvonne Pringle, and it's kind of like, oh, I want to talk to her a lot, like all the time. Like, and those kind of things start to change. But I don't think if I had not really taken the time that I took during that season to really focus in on what God had to develop in me and to build in me and to mature in me as a man, I don't think I would have
Mhm.
been prepared for this time. I didn't realize what he was doing at the moment. But I
Mm.
look back on it now and I'm very grateful. I don't regret it. Yeah, some people may say, yeah, I was 26,
Mm.
27 at the time. Like, oh man, that would have been a perfect time for you to get married. I'm like, no, it wouldn't have, because I knew who I was at that time. And even
Mm.
though outwardly to you, I may have seemed very mature, there were things in me
Mhm.
that still had to be fixed, that had to be
Right.
honed and crafted. And I think God just made me all the better for it.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, all right.
Good stuff. Yes. My belief is that a good man prepares.
Mm.
Um,
Amen.
I was always taught that a good man prepares not just to have, an inheritance for your children, but it's the Genesis 1 man's job to be ready for his wife. Um,
Mm.
if I take it from a biblical, y'all know me, I'm a biblical nerd, but
Yeah.
from the biblical standpoint, it was not the man's choice to get married.
Mm. Okay.
It was it was not originally his thought.
Mm.
The man was ruling and reigning in what God had for him prior to the thought process that it wasn't good for him to be alone.
Mhm.
So, to Jonathan's point, it is appropriate for us to really take the time to get to know ourselves, get to know our purpose, get to know, where is it that God has gifted me? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because the other thing that I was taught was, or is, it is abuse of a woman to bring a woman into a situation where you can't answer those questions.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, if we're doing it the biblical way, the only reason why the woman showed up was because God looked at me and said, "Don't do it by yourself."
Mm. Got you.
And so, um, yeah, you have to prepare, and that might be different for every male, but the basic stuff, Genesis 1 man that I learned, um, you've got your relationship with God. You should be in that. You should be enjoying it, like Jonathan said, you and God. And if somebody comes, if somebody presents themselves or God presents them, amazing. If not, I can go to the movies by myself. I can date myself. I can take a trip by myself. All of those things that we in unhealthy emotional or mental states look for, or we reach out for other people to do for us. We're supposed to be whole as single people. And part of the greatest part of preparation, like Jonathan said, I believe, for a wife is being a whole you.
Yeah.
Part of my recent story is that I was doing amazing. I was in Maryland at the time. I was writing songs for recordings.
Mm.
I was in the school system. I had just been offered a job. And so in my relocation to where I am now, I gave up about 6 figures. I gave up 6 figures to
What?
transition
Wow.
because I wanted to come to the area of preference, to be a good man, to
Mm.
be a good father, and so those, you know, the other issue with that was sacrifice. And
Wow.
so, that was a part of the preparation, even with that, understanding the cost and being
Mm.
willing to pay the cost. And, my situation didn't work out like other people's, but even though I'm in a rebuilding phase, it's still the same thing of understanding your value, understanding that it's God that makes you whole. And the thing that didn't work out the way I hoped it would has actually been an amazing thing because during this time, it's like the opportunities that it looked like I lost are just falling into
Mm.
place, and God is literally restoring the years that or the time that it looked like I lost. So, yeah, you definitely prepare. You're a good man if you prepare, and you're a bad man if you bring a woman into a situation where you haven't thought about preparing for her, preparing for the security of that house, the spiritual, uh, health, the health of the house.
Wow. That was, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, oh, April
Look,
was
I
about to
don't
say
want to
something.
hijack. Yes, I
Go
don't want to
ahead.
hijack this, but I'm enjoying Jonathan and Teray. All right, let me ask you this. You said something that we talked about being prepared. And I heard something from a preacher, I'm not going to name him, but he was talking about how he was prepared for his wife and things he did. And the lofty things that he was naming seemed very unrealistic. And
Mm,
what I mean by that is there an unrealistic view of what being prepared to be married looks like?
Mm.
Like you got to have a 850 credit score, no debt
Come on.
whatsoever, love Jesus, be able to buy me Gucci and Prada. And when I don't feel like cooking, take me. Ray looks so disturbed, but I'm telling you, that I have heard this said at women's singles conferences by
ooh,
male
Mm.
preachers about, and he didn't say it like that, but it was like it broke my heart because I was like, whoa, 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 man, you don't need that for April. No, no, no. Like, it ain't that serious. I think I have seen it, and I want to know you as men. Is there any weird or unrealistic expectations amongst men, even if it's not personally you two, about what being prepared for a wife looks like? Because to me, it makes no sense for you to have to be perfect to be with me because I'm not coming
Mm.
perfect. But anyway, I'm gonna let y'all talk.
mhm.
Ray, you want that
Nick want
first?
to
You want
start?
me to go?
I'll take it.
All
Yeah,
right,
I'll
go
take
ahead.
it.
He said, I'll take it.
Um, I would say that okay, I'm the type of personality. I'm a protagonist. All right, a protagonist. Yeah, uh-huh. A protagonist is the type of person that at times their weakness can be that they are kind of lofty because they sometimes I can literally be in a place of how things should be ideal in an ideal manner. Um, I don't stay there, but that could potentially be a weakness at times. I said that because a lot of times we go to the extreme of idealism
Mm.
to explain to people how things should be without realizing you have to be centered enough to have your feet on the ground. And even though you have amazing goals and amazing things that you want to accomplish, a vision is nothing without a goal, and a goal is nothing without a plan. So when you're talking about the expectations, I don't think for every man it is because I think the difference between people like myself and Jonathan, I can't speak for him, but I think the difference between people like us and some of other guys are not even thinking about that.
Mm.
There's some guys don't even care. They're not even thinking about that. They're into their own. They're into trying to find their way. They're into what they're trying to do, and thinking about preparing for a woman doesn't hit you until you reach a certain maturity place. And so once you actually reach it, though, I think that that has to be a discussion. But I can see how people's ideas from what they saw in their family, what they saw with their parents, their grandparents, um, TD Jakes, Sarita Jakes, and their family recently did something that was
Lot of
amazing.
homes.
Yes. And in the midst of doing that, they went through all of these questions, all of these scenarios, and expectations was part of that conversation. Um, I think that it is unrealistic for you to expect a man in some situations to just be coming out and pouring out all this stuff. And I'm a spoiler by nature because that's just me. I'm romantic, but it can be unreasonable at times if that is not something that is reciprocated for you to just expect somebody to pour and pour and pour and do and do and do. But I think from the standpoint of taking care of a woman or taking care of a family, that is a biblical responsibility of a man. So
Mm,
as a man, you don't go into that unadvised because we understand that part of what God expects when I accept the responsibility of a woman or a child is that I become the progenitor because there was no woman before the man. It had nothing to do with um, men being better. It was divine order.
mm,
And so the reason why Genesis can say God created man and in the same sentence say male and female created he them was
mhm,
because the woman was going to come out of the man, which meant the man had to provide, he had to take care of what came out of him. So you
mm,
can't go into that kind of situation not thinking about how you're going to care for the person. But there can be inappropriate expectations if you run into folks that are not whole.
mm.
Folks, there's some, I've experienced women that are looking for a man to be the knight in
Yeah.
shining armor, come take care of them, come pay their bills, um, come put them in another cash bracket, tax bracket. But I've also experienced women that had all their own stuff
Mhm.
and were willing to work as a team. Everything hasn't been negative. It's just, you know,
Wow.
you have to consider who you're dealing with and where they're coming from. Because when you're dealing with people coming from broken places, it's gonna all be on some level. It's gonna be inappropriate expectation if that hasn't been worked out.
Wow.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to maybe add a little bit more, I kind of like to think of it this way. One of the reasons Superman is such a popular hero in pop culture and in science fiction and even in Americanism of sorts and this American ideology is because he represents and epitomizes all these lofty ideals that we aspire to achieve for ourselves. Here's
Mm,
the
Right.
thing about Superman, though. He's still fictional, still not real. He is that an aspiration. He is a
Mhm.
symbol, but there is no Superman. The closest, I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to call somebody Superman, call it Jesus Christ, because that's
wow.
Superman. But you're not going to find anybody like that. You're not going to find somebody who can bend steel with their hands. You're not going to find somebody who has X-ray vision or can fly or is invulnerable. We are human. We are flawed. We are messy.
Right.
We are in
Right.
Mm,
progress. And I think there has to be a certain level of grace
Yeah.
mhm.
when you're coming to any relationship or
Yeah.
to any situation with anyone. And
Right.
just and like Torre was saying, ground yourself in reality. There's nothing wrong with having expectations. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with valuing yourself so much that you said, I'm not going to take anything and everything. Absolutely.
Right.
You're made in the image and likeness of God. You should not
Right.
take any and everything. That said, just because a man isn't driving a BMW doesn't mean he's not God's man for you.
Oh my.
Um, and like Tori was saying, so many people are not whole and are looking for a person to fill voids
Mm,
or to be their recipe for happiness. You will never, ever
Mhm.
find happiness in another human being. Yvonne and I talk about this quite often. If I'm depending on you to make me happy, this is going to be rough. Because
ugh.
I'm looking for happiness outside of Christ. There's no such thing. In
Right.
his presence is the fullness of joy. God doesn't even promise happiness.
Oh,
So
come
why am
on,
I looking for
somebody.
happiness in a person?
That's
Come
good.
Right.
on
You're
now.
going to disappoint me every time.
It's
And
the
I'm going to disappoint
Mhm.
you.
Ooh.
Right.
Human, we're flawed. And disappointment
Mhm.
is part and parcel of the human experience. I'm not
Right.
going to get it right all the time. You're not going to get it right all the time. I think the reason why we see so many fractured and shattered relationships is because people are going all in saying, this is the answer to my brokenness. This is the answer to the father who wasn't in my life.
Right.
This is the
Right.
answer to the mother who neglected me. This is the answer to what fill in the blank. No,
Talking
sweetie,
good.
that man is not the answer. That man is a
Right.
man.
Right.
That man is a partner. That man is a teammate. That man is a leader and a provider. But he's not your end all and be all.
Right.
Let Jesus handle you. Let him be the
Come on
mender of the
now.
Come
brokenness.
on
Like,
here.
he's the
Exactly.
mender of broken hearts. Let him put
Yes.
you back together. So
Yes.
that when you're in that relationship with that man, you're not depending on him for your emotional wholeness at all.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean that in the course of relationship, he won't make, of course he should make you happy. Absolutely. But you have to understand relationship is a commitment. So
Right.
we're in this thing for the long haul. In marriage, as the Bible prescribes it, we're in this thing till death do us part. Like this is it. This is commitment. This is covenant. So in covenant, that means I'm there even when you're not fully there. I'm there in the days where you drive me absolutely crazy and I'm ready to walk out the door, but I don't.
Right.
Because I made a covenant.
Right.
We won't be able to get to that place where we can actually be steady in that covenant if we're just looking for emotional satisfaction. That gratification is so tenuous and so transient, it passes like that. Because think about the course of everyday life. Happiness is so circumstantial. I'm happy today because I got off work off time. I'm happy today because I didn't have to, the people I was working on projects with actually did what I told them to do, and we got this stuff done. Like, I'm happy. But if tomorrow something changes, I may not be so happy anymore, So joy is what will keep you. Joy. The joy of the Lord is your strength.
Right.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Wow.
And also the responsibility, a lot of times we're looking so hard. I mean, we're looking so hard at being happy that we neglect what the Bible really says about what we're doing. And that's the part about being grounded. I've dealt with it a number of times, but I had to learn it in my own life as well. When you get married, the Bible commands the man to die. And it commands the woman to pay attention and respect. That is, in layman's terms, without going through it all, in Ephesians 5, love your wife as Christ loved the church. What did Christ do?
He died.
That joker, he died.
He died.
Lord, he did now.
Okay, and so a lot of times we're so caught up. We're so caught up in the emotional highs or in the fantasy of what it is that we want or we're looking for that we neglect to really pay attention to what it is that God says it is, and really take the time to think about, okay, wait a minute, Lord, I might need some help, because how I'm gonna do this?
Yeah.
Because the reality of it, even Jesus didn't want to die.
Come on. It's the truth.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
And so, like, we got to be able to, just humble ourselves to be grounded in our thought, and really, a lot of times, I love what Jonathan was saying. A lot of times, what breaks us is the fact that we don't go about things God's way. And when we adjust God's plan, and then we expect God's results, and then we don't get them.
Oh my Lord.
then we find ourselves coming back around the circle saying, okay, God, why did this happen? And then because we're usually too stubborn or too proud or too, sometimes we're even too broken to really admit the truth, because that's what happens to us too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's your fault. We go to Adam and Eve. It's your fault. It's your fault. Well, no. What did I do here? Was this God's way? Did I do something out of timing? Did I do something out of season? Did I say something wrong? Was I not submitted to my person? And so, I think that those are things, that we have to look at it as men and women in relationships.
Awesome.
It's good.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Terrell. we ain't got you on camera no more, Lord.
Hi,
Okay.
Terrell.
Okay, I guess we'll wait for him to come back on to properly introduce him. So, okay, well, okay, we talked about I guess one challenge when it comes to dating, but I just kind of wanted to see what challenges have you guys encountered when it comes to dating Christian women. Okay, we know the expectations piece, but you ain't got to tell your business, but just in general, what have been some of the things you have experienced dating
But feel
Christian
free to
women
tell
or
it if
some of
you
the
want.
challenges? And start with Torre, since he looking like
Really? Y'all
oh
gonna call me? I ain't gonna. Let me see how they call me out on network television.
network television.
um, I've had challenges as a minister, dating women that I got close to that I should have been more disciplined and pushed back because I was supposed to minister to them. I wasn't supposed to date.
Oh my. Oh.
Um, I've had challenge. Yeah. Um, I've had challenges with what I call vulnerability or intimacy issues. Um, the person that maybe has been hurt and is so guarded at times
Wow.
that and like when you go in, you don't really see it. But as you know, or at least I didn't. And so those are two issues I've had. The kind of guarded person that wants you there, but they're in the cage and they want you to come in the cage with them, but they won't reveal to you what's keeping them in the cave, and you're trying to pull them into the light, but they don't want to come out in the light. They like the cave. They want you there, and when you're dealing with that kind of unhealthiness, um, when you're dealing with that kind of unhealthiness, I've experienced just my own challenges with various things, manipulations, controls, things that people do to uh, you know keep somebody around, keep you around.
And this is
Um,
all church women?
Yeah, I was asking about
mhm.
Christian women.
Bless God. Bless you.
Oh yeah, I mean it's in the church. I
Yeah.
mean
Amen.
the
Yeah.
issue. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna give it over because I know Jonathan's got some amazing things to say. Um, we pretend that the world's issues are not the church issues,
Mm.
Mm.
but the reality is everybody in church is in this world.
Mm.
But some of us not really. We haven't switched over to not being of this world.
Oh my.
We ain't switched over yet.
We
Amen.
haven't been renewed. Many of us still deal with what we would call world issues. There's still many of us that deal with sex before marriage. There's still many of us that deal with, um, you know, uh, I guess things like pornography, things like um, being hurt, not getting over your issue. And so, I mean, just it's so many things that we're dealing with in church. And instead of coming out, having these kind of discussions and dealing with it, going to see a counselor or some, getting real deliverance, real freedom. Instead of doing that, we're putting a band-aid on it and saying, well, I'll get it right the next time. And
Wow.
so that perpetuates a lot of the things that we're talking about
Mm.
I tell you, Torre, yes, nail on head. Nail meets head. I would say for me, so I was never a serial dater. I didn't have a lot of relationships at all. Like I told you, in my early 20s, I was a commitment phobe. But I did have some relationships, and I would say the challenges that I encountered, both with Christian women, one was because we were in the church, there was this automatic expectation, like this is ending in marriage. So I was like,
wow.
with that challenge came, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful and definitely not a misogynist, but other Christian women were a challenge because their friends kind of boosted them up in that direction. Like, oh yeah, that's the man for you, girl. Yeah, that's the guy, man for you. Your low ass. I'm like, wait. And so sometimes I feel like in the church, we have a hard time allowing relationships to really develop and progress because we are so ready to just hit the altar because we're like, okay, we're believers, we're in the same church or congregation. At the very least, we have the same belief system. Let's go. I'm married. Either because I want to have sex or because I want to fulfill this obligation that I think I have to society, like that I'm supposed to do this and it has to happen now. I don't want to be in my 40s having my first kid, stuff like that. So that was definitely a challenge. I have a story, but I don't know. The person might listen, so I don't know. But let's just say some people, you know how you could be so heavenly minded that you're of no earthly good?
Yes.
Some people claim that they have a revelation about you and another person that is not a revelation at all. That your desire is not prophetic at all. That's what your prophet is. What they say comes true. It did not come true. So I'm about to question.
Wow.
That's just me. So I think the second issue is like Torre said, hurt, past hurt. Hurt is hurt. Trauma. I found myself being punished for the sins of another.
Wow.
So if I said something a certain way or didn't do something, it triggered something that made the person think that I was the person who hurt them. They were lashing out at that person, but I just happened to be there. And that's problematic. Like if we can't work through that, or if you, like Torre said, can't go to counseling, which I'm a huge advocate for counseling. I've been in counseling for almost 2 years now, and it's been a blessing. You can't unpack some of that stuff and get some real help and get some tools and resources how to deal with some of that trauma and how to actually allow the Holy Spirit to truly minister to that hurt. You're just going to continue to bleed, and you're just going to get everybody else bloody. And that's what it is. Carrying from relationship to relationship, and none of these scars are healing. The thing about a wound is that, you're going to still have the scar, but at the very least, it's closed up a little bit. At the very least, there's healing happening. But when those wounds are still festering, it's a trail of blood from one person to the next person to the next person. And all you're doing is doing what the slogan says, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And it's so true. It's so true because it's all you know. And so until you start to reprogram your brain, which is a thing, it's an actual thing. We can reprogram our minds. Scripture says, be renewed in your mind. Until we do that work, and it's hard work, until we actually take that responsibility on, we're going to find ourselves falling into the same rhythms and the same patterns. And we're going to end up getting into relationships with the same types of people who just continue to hurt us even more because the hurt has become normative.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my experience.
Ooh, y'all said a mouthful. Okay.
That's the right people today.
Wow. Well, we'll keep it moving. I know in our first episode, we started off by mentioning statistical data where we highlighted the fact that women outnumber men by an alarming level, 50 men to every 100 women in the historically Black churches. So given these statistics, I know for us, it makes it more difficult, but like on the other side of this, is it easier for men to find quality candidates, or does the oversaturation of women make it more difficult? Like, what would be your response to that question? Torre, I'll start with you again on that.
Okay. I mean, it's not hard to. I want to say this right. When there are women everywhere, you you become a person that really has to find.
Mm,
The Bible says the man that findeth a wife is, or he, it says whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor from the Lord. So there's been no time in church history where men were not outnumbered by women in church. That's just the way it's always been.
yeah.
Um, from the standpoint of finding a relationship in church, um, I don't think that it's necessarily a hard thing to do to find quality candidates, if you understand what quality means to you, or to
Mm,
what quality means according to God.
mhm.
Um, whoso finds a wife, not whoso find a girlfriend.
Oh my.
Not to negate the process of relationship, because
Mhm,
relationship does go through a process. But there are a lot of, I would say sometimes it can be challenging because of how many people you may have coming at you. How many people may be saying the Lord told me you my husband.
yeah.
Um, you know, um, I mean, that's real in church, especially in African American church culture. That's
Yeah.
a real deal, because men tend to be more, visual and mind focused, whereas women tend to be more, auditory and emotional focused. So, I would say that it doesn't have to be a challenge, um, but it can be if you don't have strong value systems on what you believe is quality.
Mm,
Because the operative word in your question, for me at least, is quality. When
mhm,
you look at Genesis and you look at Adam and Eve, when God says it's not good for him to be alone, he didn't bring him a trophy.
mhm,
He brought him somebody to assist him in the ginormous work he was already doing. We're talking about a man that had a mentality of a millionaire. He owns the
mhm.
entire he owns the entire planet. He's naming everything on the planet.
Wow.
His job was to cultivate the garden that he lived in, which meant he had
Mm,
dominion. He had to take care of everything. This
mhm,
is a This is a Fortune 500 plus, um, millionaire businessman, so on and so forth. So the quality of the person that God created for him, when you look at them, is nature and nurture. In psychology, we talk about it, but when we get to Christendom, we kind of ignore nature and nurture. When the
mm,
reality is usually the person that God allows in your life is somebody that matches you, nature and nurture. They may
mm,
not be exactly the same as you, but
mhm,
it's good to have a person that's going for God the same way that you are. Um, you know, and just because we're in the same church don't mean we got the same value system.
mm. This is true.
You know, and so I think that those things can kind of muddy the water. But I mean, it's definitely numbers out here, and if we're just experimenting with our lives, the answer is no. There is
Mm,
no. It's not hard at all. But if
gotcha.
we really want the right things, then because we have to be discerning, and because we have to be discerning for the right thing, that can take some time.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say, sanctification is a process. Um,
Hmm.
and so, like Torre said, not everybody who's in the church is in the church. Not
Mhm,
everybody
Hmm.
has been converted. Even Jesus told Peter, when you are converted,
Hmm.
brethren. It's a process. And
Right.
so I think the question about quality, which I really like how Torre kind of homed in on that, because I think it goes both ways. Are you a quality man looking for a quality woman?
Oh
Boom.
my.
So, because we have a
Boom.
lot of dudes out here who
Right.
aren't, who just, straight up aren't, who are looking for one thing and one thing only. And I'm sure you may have run into several in your life. And so I think it's a reciprocity type thing, because you're going to get what you want. You're going to get what you attract, because there is a copious amount of women in the church. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Church tends to skew a little more feminine. It appeals to women. A lot of women are still very plugged in and involved in the church, while men are leaving in droves, it seems. So you can find easily, man, it's not hard for men to really find what they're looking for, but it depends on the type of man and exactly what that man is looking for. So if you are one who is chasing after God, if you are trying to build yourself up on your most holy faith, if you are serious about your convictions and your values, God will lead you to a woman who matches you in every bucket. As Tori said, you may not be the same. You are individuals. But in terms of what you believe about Christ, what you believe about the church, what you believe about ministry, or how active you are in ministry, those kind of things, missions, like what you believe about the Great Commission, even those kind of things, those things will match. But if you're really just looking for a good time, you'll find that too. Because you attract that. You will pay for it long run in the long term, absolutely. But I think that question, it goes both ways. Men, I would say men probably have the advantage, as men tend to do in the society. We are in a patriarchal society, and male privilege is real. That is in the church as well. Male privilege is very real. And so you are a man, you're one of a few young brothers in a church full of women who are looking for their husband, then chances are you're going to be quite popular. Especially if you have a nice smile, you might have some muscles, you might have a nice job, a good job, and a nice car. Yeah, you're going to be popular. But then I think there's a onus and responsibility on the man to be God's man first.
Right.
That is becoming harder and harder to find. It's not impossible. We exist, but we are in this world system, and so people are still undergoing that process of sanctification. So a good-looking brother may walk through the door, but he may not be where you want him to be on the inside. There's some work that has to happen. So
yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I know that you got to get out of here, Torre, pretty soon. So I wanted to, you guys kind of answer the next question that I had, which as it relates to unbalanced teaching in the church. It sounds like you guys both agree that it is kind of unbalanced when it relates to women and marriage and men and marriage. Or am I mistaken on that point? Do you agree that there is some, like when it comes to topics of marriage in the church, they're more geared towards women than they are towards men, is what I'm saying. Y'all pretty
I think it's more societal. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, you can say it, but I wouldn't necessarily just relegate that to church. I would say that is and has been for quite some time a societal norm. Whatever society says is kind of, it's kind of the norm. Jonathan talked about it earlier when he spoke about socialization, and he talked about how women tend to be raised to, want to be mothers and wives and homemakers through the toys we play with, so on and so forth. While men are taught to play games, and men are taught to make it to the top, achieve, be competitive. And so through socialization, we automatically have a different we have differences because of how we taught. But I honestly think that anybody that wants to know and wants to know for real, the information is out there. I personally, I wouldn't. I'm not one to throw. I wouldn't throw the blame. But if anybody really wants to know what it means to be whole, that becomes a personal search. That becomes a personal goal. Um, Jonathan and I also talked about being happy with being single.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the church can talk about that from God's perspective, but if that's what you really want, how bad do you want it? What are you willing to go searching? Are you willing to go find the teaching? Because it is out there. And I mean, personally, I love folks like Bishop Noel Jones teaching on singlehood. I love
Mm-hmm.
people like, God rest his soul, we lost a good one, Dr. Miles Monroe.
Yeah.
Um, um, his teachings on singlehood. And I mean, and there are good pastors out there that are out there today that are teaching it. But I wouldn't say that it's unbalanced. I would just say, it's to some degree, it might be, or I don't know. But if the person wants the information, it's out there.
Got you. Wow.
Can I put a little caveat in this? See, I know Teray got to go. Teray, I want to hold you, and
I
I know you got
know.
stuff to do.
It's all good. It's all
And
good.
before Jonathan responds, I just want to add this little piece because my name is April, and I threw blame in the other episode, and I'm throwing on the church because this is the thing. I got taught when we talk about the unbalanced teaching. We were also talking about the purity movement and the difference between which I
Oh
know there's some
yeah.
loose booty sisters out here, so please don't. I'm
Woo,
not trying to put this on just the
loose
men,
booty.
but
Mhm,
we were taught before. I got taught before it was I was old enough to start caring. When I was in my teens, I heard, "Baby, close your legs. You don't dress like this in front of the man. Men get tempted. Blah blah blah, and you save yourself for marriage." And that was taught to me, and I think it should be taught prior to
mhm,
me even being to the place where I was ready for marriage, because it's something that got to be kind of instilled and retaught and resaid. And what we said was the imbalance is I ain't really see that being mirrored or taught to the men in the same caveat. Like, brothers, there's a reason for purity and there's a purpose for
mhm,
marriage, so that when you come of age, you understand why you doing what you're doing,
mhm,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
instead of waiting till which is nothing wrong. I don't want to make it seem like ageism, because it's
mhm,
fine, whatever age, because it's not really about us.
mhm,
But where you maybe could have been married at 35, you're
mhm,
55, just figuring out this is what I
mhm,
need to do. So that's where we were talking about the imbalance purely,
mhm,
mainly on the purity aspect of it, and me being told certain things that I need to
mhm,
do sexually,
Mm-hmm.
as far as preserving myself from the marriage. So that's where
right,
that I felt like, man, the church, we need to level
right,
this playing field, because a lot of women, I don't just mourn for myself, the younger generation, like these men are not being prepared, and women are out here like, man, look, I guess I'm
right.
just gonna be by myself. It's cool. Try to be cool with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of that, before I get ready to go, I think part of that depends on exposure. It depends on part of that depends on exposure. Part of that depends on your neck of the woods. Um, and it may depend on the body of believers that you're with. Um, you know, Teaching is different in, how can I say, it might be a little different in New York than it is in the little small town of West End where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so the exposure, which is the reason why, as a little country boy, I expose myself to larger things, because there's a bigger picture that I may not see because of where I come from. And so I think that the exposure to it as well might be something that can really help.
Wow. All right. And Teray, you,
Yeah.
you you doing a you have a book as well. Say that and tell people where they can follow you before you peace out on us.
Okay. Okay. The book is called Training God's Minstrel's Manual. It is a book about um, developing as a worshiper and using music as a tool to do so. It can be found on wherever books are sold, all media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Torre Siler. I'm also at Tosi Enterprises, TOSI Enterprises, on all social media. And thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much,
All
Torre.
right,
Thank
guys.
you.
We
Bye.
Bye,
appreciate you.
Teray.
Bye.
it. Bye bye. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Love you
You
too.
too.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess, represent for all the men now,
Yep,
huh?
I guess so. Terrell just, I don't know what happened. So it's just you.
That's fine. That's
You
fine.
got it. You
But
got it, Jonathan. You got it.
I'd love to respond to April because I agree with you completely, 100%. And I wanted to actually weave that into with something that Teray said earlier about how society has crept into the church. Because I think what we sometimes forget is that, yes, our citizenship is in heaven. We are in the world, but not of the world. But we also have to remember we are influenced by culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Culture on a more in the macrocosm, not the microcosm of the church, but the macrocosm of actual culture, American culture, that's our context, does not push abstinence to men traditionally. Like
That's right.
men are instead taught to dominate, conquer, achieve, even when it comes to relations with women, especially when it comes to sex, because that is seen as your arrival into manhood in a lot of places, in a lot of families.
Wow.
I mean, the foolishness with Little Boosie recently. I don't know if y'all saw that, about how he said that,
Yeah. Oh.
it's molestation, really, but yeah, it is. But that goes to show you, like, those toxic, hyper masculine ideals are passed on to young boys. That's how we're socialized. That's how we're taught. I remember in school finding out that people my age, 13, 14 years old, having sex. And I'm like, what? Like, to me, that was crazy. Like, dang.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's happening younger and younger.
Mhm.
And these are the messages that little boys are getting, because there seems to be a lack of real godly manhood willing to say, no, son, it's okay. You are not feminine. You are not gay. You are not strange if you wait to have sex.
Right.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Strong. In fact, you are doing this God's way. In fact, you are entering into a covenant relationship in the purest way possible, and it's going to be beautiful when you actually do have sex. I think one of the other things that, and I'm not a woman, so please correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of women, when they're taught about abstinence, maybe they're not always taught why. I think, April, you kind of got at that. Why do I
Right.
exactly?
Right.
What is the end goal here? What's the reward waiting for me? Like, help me, give me something so I can make it.
That's good, Jonathan.
Come on.
Half the people around me ain't keeping their legs closed. I'm like,
the truth.
have a great time. And I'm feeling this way. And I'm like, help me. You know? But it's like in church, those topics have been so taboo for so long. I don't know why we're so afraid of sex. It is God created and God ordained.
Right.
God created and God ordained for a specific relationship and a specific covenant. Let's have those conversations early so that we can teach our young men and women why the sanctity of, why the marriage bed is undefiled, why waiting to have sex till marriage is so wonderful and is so and beautiful. Like, encourage it, make it sound appealing. Like, all we're hearing is the way human nature works. You tell us not to do something. What happens when you tell a child not to touch the stove? Touch. That's what happens. Touch. You didn't tell me why not to. You didn't say you're gonna get burned, you're gonna end up in the hospital, you're gonna have to, it's gonna be painful. No, just don't touch the stove. I said because I said so. Touch, touch, touch. Like, and that's what's happening. People are touching because all we're doing is saying no, no, no. And we won't actually explain the good things about sex, because that's another thing. We make people afraid of it too at the same time. And so it's just like, there's a huge misunderstanding about sex, what it is, how it works. Like, and I'm not trying to say we need to be lewd and graphic or anything or gratuitous or anything like that. Just be honest. Sex is in the Bible.
Amen.
Look at Solomon. I mean, come on. Like,
a whole book.
Yeah.
Whole book.
A whole book.
Yes.
granted, age-appropriate material, of course, at certain ages. But by the time I'm 21 and I'm still like holding out, we can have a serious conversation. Because if I hadn't had it by then, I'd either been close, I thought about it a whole lot. I know people who are doing it all the time, or I kind of dibbled and dabbled and kind of got real on the outskirts of it. So talk about it.
Amen.
Wow.
I think that was so wonderfully and eloquently said, Jonathan, because when we did have this first dating in the church dating in the church part one, that was one of the things that I don't know if I brought it up or April brought it up, just the whole concept about sex, because we're always told, don't do it, but we're never told the why behind it shouldn't be done. And then just like what April had said, to reiterate, and what you've already said, culture has very much so infiltrated the church. And so, we don't even consider teaching abstinence to young men. Really,
Yeah, it's the
even
truth.
if it's something that in youth group, like I remember growing up, and we had I was a part of a youth group called Mind, Body, and Soul, and it was a pretty even balance between young girls and young boys. Still more girls than boys, but there were young men there. Now I don't remember them specifically speaking on sex, but I do know from my own personal upbringing, like with my grandmother and my, the older women and people in my family, it was always a no. But I don't know if that was anything that was told to my other cousins that were, same age as me or whatever. And I don't think that it's something that's emphatically ministered in today's culture, because I think the assumption is they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
We don't
Live
even
and
give
try.
abstinence as an option.
Yeah.
We take it from the approach of, we know you're going to have sex. So if you have sex, have safe sex, which we know that there is no such thing. And I understand that concept as well, the idea of safe sex, but I still feel like abstinence, at least in the body of Christ, should still be taught as an option.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm thinking about my own upbringing, and hopefully my mama doesn't listen to this because she'll be mad. But, she sent me to college with a bag of condoms. Because it was basically like that. Like, she was doing what she thought was the right thing.
Right.
Because, you're going to have it. So you might as well be protected.
Right.
Don't be making babies. You're there to get a degree. It's like,
right.
And I didn't have it at all. And I took those condoms back. I took them right back home. I'm like, I don't need these. I'm good. Because I was committed. I was committed, and I had those convictions. But I think, honestly, to be completely 100 with you, because that wasn't something really reinforced to me in church or really even at home, because my dad was really squeamish. He didn't want to talk about sex at all. My mom talked about sex to me, which was weird because I'm a boy. Please stop. But my dad wasn't really one to broach the topic. But so I think that had I been more confident in who I was during that time of my life, there's a chance I would have had sex in college. I didn't, because I felt like I felt awkward, and I was still kind of coming into my looks, and I had a lot of low self-esteem. But if I felt good about myself, I can't necessarily say that I would not have slipped, at least in some of those, at least my freshman year. Because my freshman year is when I rededicated my life to Christ. So
me too.
Hey,
to the light.
So it was freshman year, but there was some time freshman year where I was kind of going to parties, trying to see what that scene was like, because I was away from home. So I'm like, okay, I'm kind of free here to do things now. Hanging out in people's dorm rooms, at night, late. So I don't know. In that time, that little window of time, I don't know what I would have done had I felt better about my physical self. Because again, it wasn't really reinforced to me. I knew what the church taught. I had signed one of those purity pledges my junior year of high school. I had and all that. I look back then. Okay. Signed, got it.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. So yeah, for sure. I think it's important. Abstinence is right. Righteousness is still right. God's way.
Sanctification.
Right. Sanctification is still right. And I think we could help people avoid a lot of pain if we would just be more honest and candid.
More honest.
Upfront.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More honest.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's good.
Awesome.
That was good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, another thing that we brought out in our last episode, April had brought this out as far as feeling that there was a need, well, like we all did, for the church. What was the church's responsibility in aiding singles towards marriage? So do you feel like the church has any responsibility in that? And if so, what do you feel that responsibility is?
I think the church, I'll take it to another level. I think the church has a responsibility to minister to singles. I think that's what's lacking. Singles, as someone who was one, are kind of like this mysterious, weird generation of people or a group of people who are like in limbo. It's like there's not a lot of content or programming geared to them. There's not a lot of talk about them. We don't talk about singleness in sermons very much. We don't talk about singleness in Bible study. It literally jumps to marriage. And I'm like, okay, we get it. Cool, yes. But help me in the here and now. Like, what are you going to do to help me now? So the focus, like, find any church on any corner and you'll find a marriage ministry. How many have singles ministries? Not too many. And if they do, how many of those singles ministries are actually active in helping their singles? Like actually doing things, actually doing activities, actually helping them celebrate singleness, not just for the express purpose of marriage, because some people have been called, I believe, have been called to a life of singleness. Some people are maybe just won't get married. That does not mean that they are somehow an affront to God, or that they are not of use in the church, or that they can't minister to married people, or that they can't minister in this capacity. Not at all. Paul was single. But he was the foremost apostle to the Gentiles, wrote most of the New Testament. It is evident God will and can use single people. We need to encourage them, though, because singleness sometimes can lead to loneliness. Not for everybody. Some people are very happy. Some people are just introverts and they're happy and they're cool. I don't want you in my space. Others are extroverts who are longing for companionship and are not getting it at the moment and kind of just feel forgotten about and lost. So I think we need to do a better job. It's our responsibility to minister to anybody and everybody in the body, and those outside the body, of course. But if we're talking about in the actual ecclesiastical church, it's our responsibility to care for everyone. So that includes the single who is in her or his early 20s, has a desire for marriage, wants to be married, feels that they're called to be married, but right now that's not happening. And if you've ever been in a situation where you feel like you're called to something and you're not that thing, so much frustration abounds. It is one of the most frustrating things because you feel like you're falling short of purpose. And that is like unmet desire is like a painful feeling. It's pain. Yeah. There's grieving and there's mourning and there's weeping on the inside because you're like, God, I know you have this for me. You told me to do this thing, but it's not happening. And I just feel so unfulfilled. Hannah felt unfulfilled. I believe that Hannah, she had a desire to be a mother. So I feel like she felt like she was called to be one, but all she saw was, and I may be mispronouncing the name, Peninnah, mocking her, laughing at her, getting and having the very thing that Hannah so desired. And here's Hannah married to Elkanah, and Elkanah loves her. And Elkanah's like, I'm not enough for you? Like, am I not enough? Is this not good enough? But Hannah's like, I have this desire. She couldn't let it go. So much so that she prayed so fervently that Eli thought she was drunk. And so sometimes our singles are wrestling with that unmet desire. And they're trying to figure out what do I do? How do I manage this? We have a responsibility to meet them where they are and to help them. Not just to say, here's how you get a man. Here's how you get a woman. I feel like that's the wrong message. The message should be, here is what you can do in this time to prepare for when God takes you to the next. If you truly believe that God has a spouse in store for you, then okay, I'm going to believe that with you, and we're going to help you get to that place, but we're also going to help you now. We're going to help nurture you now. We're going to help build you up now. We're going to encourage you now. We're not going to forget about you. So many people feel forgotten, and not just the young person in their 20s, but the widow or the widower or the divorcee. You know, they're also now single again. That's hard. You know, I can't empathize because I've not been in that position. God willing, I never will be. But I can't imagine how difficult that has to be for someone who lost a spouse, lost their partner, and now you're in a church body and everything is geared toward people who are married. You feel kind of on the fringes, in the margins, like I just don't matter anymore because they're not talking to me anymore. No one's talking to me. So I think we need to do a better job overall just ministering to singles, period.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. If we could sow some money, I would. Like I cash
a mighty seed.
Right. Cash app.
Turn it down now.
Sow a seed because you're preaching real good, sir.
Yes.
I think one of the things that you said for me, and I know the other hosts and ladies have much to add too, but I think one of the main things that you said that really ministered to me, and you know, on that first episode, I was very blunt in stating that, you know, most of the single ministries that I've been a part of have just been trash. I'm not even going to be funny about it. It's been trash. And so thankfully, just because God is gracious and I have very healthy relationships in my life with friends, I feel well-rounded. But even now, you know, at 40, going into 41, I feel like I'm just fully embracing, the possibility of, what if this is my lot? Am I okay with it being my lot? And living life to the fullest. You know, there were things that I held off on doing because I was saving them for marriage. Places that I held off on wanting to go visit because I was saving them to do these. This is the place I want to honeymoon with my spouse. Now I'm like, it's all for the taking, especially after COVID. It's like, right, it's somebody's honeymoon, and so I think it's so important to. I think it's so important to teach. I think it's so important to teach singleness from a place of being whole with and content with where you are. And especially for the person who desires marriage, but that's just not where they are, because Paul chose it. Paul was like, be like me. Yeah. And I'm like, not really, Paul, not really trying to go there. I
mean, that's good for you and all.
Appreciate you, but
yeah, that ain't really what I feel like he's saying. But even jokes aside, I don't want to be like Paul, but I am like Paul right now. And I think it's important that we teach singleness from a place of being whole, not from the end goal being marriage. And for so long, for me, the end goal has been marriage. And so now, even though I 100% desire marriage, I'm trying to navigate the place of, if that is not the lot, am I still going to be content with this life that I have? And I think that's where we should target single ministry. And if you get married, then that's just like cherry on top.
Right. Yeah. Because ultimately, we are here for the display of God's splendor.
Right.
And if there's one thing we know about the way God gets glory in this earth, sometimes we go through. A lot of times we go through.
Yeah.
That's how his glory is magnified through our lives. We are his ambassadors. We are his vessels. And so oftentimes we are placed in very difficult seasons and positions so that we decrease and that God may increase. And it's hard. It's hard. It is difficult to suffer. It's difficult to go without, especially if it's something you want. But like you said, sweet, getting to that place where you are content, like Paul said he was content in any circumstance.
Any state,
Any state. Getting to that, I think, is the joy that scripture speaks of, because that joy sustains you when the loneliness becomes so pronounced that it hurts physically. Joy. That joy
Yeah.
keeps you. When things are scary in your life because things are going awry and you really just want somebody to comfort you and to hug on you and to embrace you. If you're not able to get to your friends or to relatives,
Mm-hmm.
joy.
Yeah.
Joy sustains you. So it's tough and it's a process.
Yeah.
Like I said, when I got to a similar place in my mid-20s, it was a process. You know, it was kind of like, but I think sometimes it's easier for men though, because
Yeah.
like a lot of things are. Except if you're a black man. But that's a side.
Well,
Oh,
Yeah,
you
that's a
starting
sidebar. That's a
something.
sidebar. But like I said, we benefit from a society that really puts the ball in our court a lot of the time. And because of the makeup of men and how we kind of relate to women and how we kind of emote and how we deal with things, we kind of, it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's necessarily easier for us to bounce back or to deal with certain adversities. The way we do it is just different because typically we just shut down. Like we just close ourselves off, and we try to stop ourselves from feeling. Women are different, are wired differently. You feel as as God ordained you to. I mean, you are carriers. You take things on. You're nurturers by nature. Now, am I saying that women are only consigned to those roles? Absolutely not. But the way God ordained, like crafted you and made you, that's just kind of how you relate and you navigate and maneuver in the world. And so I would imagine sometimes that loneliness is really intense, or kind of feeling like, man, this is something I really want, but it's just not happening. That's really intense. And so, yeah, getting to that place, I applaud you for getting to that place. I do. That takes, I admire that. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of grit and a lot of faith.
Yeah.
Because some people in that process are like, screw this. I'm gonna go and do what I want. And they wilding out, and then they end up being mothers, all right, or worse, or worse. They still don't have the spouse.
Right.
Still don't have the man. Still don't have the husband. Another thing, the fact that you are in your 40s, I tell y'all, black don't crack. I'm telling y'all. Don't.
Yeah.
That's not. Melanin magnificence. Melanin
Magnificent. Yes. That's a t-shirt. I'm like,
well, God,
you preaching good, Jonathan. You preaching the good gospel, my brother.
My Lord.
Praise God. Praise God.
And I just want to add one thing to what you said. You said so much wonderful things, but when you were talking about the singles ministry, it makes me to try to be more responsible too, in my own church and how I look at things, because my singleness does look different. I'm a divorcee and I have two sons from the marriage. And a lot of times, a single that is with children, they move differently than a single that don't have no kids. So a lot of times, even if they do talk about singleness, it is talked about in a way that still doesn't include me. And a lot of times women will succumb to just taking the next one that comes, because it is a lot of pressure that you're doing a two-person job by yourself. Even if you have, like I do have, a, um, a parent who is very involved in the child's life, but they're not with you, and you're the main caregiver. It just looks different. And to help singles and say, look, we're gonna explain to you how to be good where you are, so you don't go off the deep end and make something you'll regret for you and your kids later. Because I'm telling you, every statistic, when I knew my marriage was over and my spouse wasn't going to stay, or what have you, every statistic about how black men without fathers are more likely to commit crime and they're more likely to do all the statistics started going in my head, and I was like, no, I don't want my kids. So I now about to start killing myself, putting my kids in every activity I can find. I mean, just doing it by myself. And then family members like, why are you doing so much? They gonna be all right. Doing whatever I had to not to live in certain neighborhoods, not to, and still try to be there to be a parent. It's a lot. But see, if you make the cookie cutter singles ministry,
Mm,
it, I'm
yeah.
gonna really feel like I ain't a part of it.
Right.
Because
Right.
I desire companionship, but I gotta protect these kids. And I desire companionship not just because of my own loneliness, but that my children will have a void filled of they don't feel this fatherlessness.
Right.
Now, of course, we
Mhm.
have our Heavenly Father, and He is a father to them. And they
Yeah.
have their natural father, when they see Him. But you know what I'm talking about, just
Oh, yeah.
overall, all the things. So, what you said about that was awesome. Awesome,
Mhm.
awesome, awesome.
Glory to God.
Yeah.
Glory to
Amen.
And going back to the whole, with the singles ministries or whatnot. Now, when events do happen, the men don't show up. Can you tell us, Jonathan, why the men do not come to single events?
Holly.
Because they're trash.
uh, and I want to say this, and I want to be very careful how I say this and how I come off. Remember earlier when I said that church tends to skew a little more feminine? I think for a lot of men, they feel like certain activities and certain things and the way churches run and the way pastors interact with their congregation is not as masculine of an activity as a bar or as a club or as a football game or whatever, or wherever people meet people. And so I think to them, it's like, okay, I'm going to a church singles event. So I'm gonna, and please, don't take this the wrong way. I'm gonna meet a bunch of holy rollers, and all they want to do is do Bible study. All they want to do is pray. And I want to mix and mingle. I want to have some fun. I need a stress reliever. Work has been stressful. Life is crazy. Got all this pressure. I just want to have fun with somebody. And I think there is a misperception that Christian women are not fun.
Mm.
And
Well,
so I think that is why.
There we have it.
You don't see a lot of participation from the fellas because they're like, I got better things to do on a Friday night. I got couch and with Netflix than I can at a church singles gathering. Because I think people hold on to some of those traditional ideas. Because for a lot of people, once upon a time, church was pretty stuffy.
Yeah.
It was like, especially depending on how you grew up and what your family, how involved your family was. Some people went to church almost every night of the week. And they're like, Lord have mercy, I'm done with this. I see another world out there like Jasmine and a whole new world outside.
A whole new world.
I'm like, ooh, this is fun. This is entertaining. This is exciting.
Oh, God.
It's not even that they want to partake in any kind of sinful behavior. It's just that they want to laugh. They want to have a good time. They want a buddy. They want a friend. They just want to chill out and talk about something stupid and foolish and just cut up. And sometimes I feel like they think that church women are all very serious and very uppity and like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Oh no, I'm not going to. No, I'm sorry. No, Jesus said, like.
I got you. Wow.
Jesus said.
Stand up for us, Jonathan. Tell them it's not true.
Yeah, because we want to have fun too. Because I remember, a church, I ain't gonna name the name that I used to go to. It just seemed like every time the men went on their retreats, they was on the beach, golfing, having all kinds of fun. But every time we went to the beach, we was in sessions all day. Like, can we have some fun? We want to have fun too. It was like we was having church on our retreat. And I'm just like,
and I tell you, that's how church be.
That's how church be. I feel you, Holly. I've been guilty of those. When I start getting a little bit more confident that in my ideology, singles ministries were trash, first of all, I stopped going. And then two, I was like, I don't want to go be taught all weekend.
Yeah, no.
Because I'm more of the adventurous, right? I'm more the adventurous type. So if we're going somewhere new, I want to go. They got an amusement park. They got stuff we can do. They got go-karts. I want to see what's there in this new place. And that's kind of my philosophy whenever I go anywhere I've never been. what are the attractions here?
Yeah.
And the mall is not an attraction for me because the mall is
Yeah.
everywhere.
Come
I don't
on.
want to go shopping either.
And that's an activity.
That's another activity.
Okay. You want to get your hands dirty. You want to have some adrenaline pumping.
Right.
wanna
Where the
laugh.
four-wheelers at? You know, I'm just
Absolutely.
like,
I've got this idea of church women as being so matronly and like almost nun-like. Like,
yeah.
but that's not the case. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I bless God for Yvonne because she's not like that at all.
No, she is not.
No, she will get on a roller coaster. I don't like roller coasters and nothing like that, but she will do it. She's a thrill seeker. And I think that's wonderful because she bucks the stereotype of women in church. Like, we have so much fun. We laugh constantly. And I love it because here's the thing. Life is hard enough. I need somebody to laugh.
Yes. Yes.
It's hard out here. So please, if you can't have fun, we can't talk. I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's true. That is so
Wow.
true.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, ladies, did y'all have any other questions for him? I think that was all I had.
No, this has been great.
It
This is so
That's a lot of
awesome.
fun.
It is.
So
Wow.
awesome.
I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for having
I'm
me.
telling you. Thank you for being.
Thank you for being a part.
Yes. So do you have like any lasting words that you want to maybe share with the men on that may be single, that want to be married, but maybe in that season of preparation, just anything you want to leave with them?
Definitely. Fellas, I get it. I get where you are. I understand. I encourage you to really start to embrace this season and think of it as a preparation season. You know, this is not just because your life is like this now does not mean that your life will be like this always. Scripture says that God knows our end from our beginning. So if you are single, perhaps seek him for the answer. Ask him, Lord, are you preparing me for something, or is this something that I need to embrace and accept as my lot in life? Have fun, enjoy yourself. Don't sit around watching Instagram. Don't do it. And seeing how everybody else is just having a great old time and there's hashtag relationship goals. Stop. You are hurting yourself. If you're starting to compare yourself to other people. People only put things on social media that make them look really good anyway. So you're only getting half the story. I like to say that most social media is a bunch of lies. And it is, because people are giving you a glimpse. It is literally a glimpse into that moment. It is not the full story. So don't take what you see on social media as gospel. Filter it through, some critical thinking skills, and just really enjoy this time and know that whatever you're being prepared for is going to propel you into your destiny. So whether that's to be a husband, or whether that's to be a minister, whether that's to be someone's daddy, or whether that's to be someone who's going on the mission field, traveling to all these other countries, God may have something absolutely incredible in store for you. But you're so focused, you have your tunnel vision on this one thing because you've been taught that this is the one thing you need to do in your life. It's not. God is so versatile. So just think about how different people are. Just think about his creation. If God can be that versatile with all of creation, why do you think that he is only going to consign you to one thing? Why do you think that this is it for you, David? This is it for you, Greg? This is it for you, Stuart? No. God is so multifaceted. God is so deep. And there are so many things about you as a person that maybe the Lord wants you to explore and uncover. So give yourself some grace in this time. Cut yourself some slack. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the season. Please treat women with respect. They are not your playthings. You can cause a lot of harm and a lot of damage. Things up for a lot of other people. You can mess things up for her future spouse. You can mess things up for her Boaz or her children if you're not careful. So please, when you are in relationship with women, if you are casually dating or if you're courting or whatever the case may be, understand that this is serious. This is not play. This is feelings and emotions are not something you just toy around with. Okay, it's time to be man. Stand up, step up. Try and work through any commitment phobias that you may have, like I had to, and just be who God has called you to be. Understand what it means to be God's man and commit to that in every facet of every relationship in your life.
Awesome.
Amen.
And
That's
I hope
good.
this gives women
Amen.
hope as well to see that there are some men out here that's doing this thing right.
Yes, ladies.
It's very, very encouraging. So
Amen.
thank you for being on, you as well as Torre. Like, this conversation has been very enlightening. And it's just awesome to see that you guys have the same thoughts, the same wants and desires that we have. You know, you've been through some of the same things we've gone through. Sometimes we as women, it's hard for us to see the other side. We only see what we're going through, but it's awesome to see, you know, both dynamics and to see that there are godly men out there that are really trying to do this thing right. So with that being said,
conversations like this are important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So give us, you know, where people can follow you, what you've worked on, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I'll give you my website first. It's johnwritesinc.com. That's Jon, writes as in writing a letter, ink.com. If you need any content writing, brand storytelling, copywriting, whatever the case may be, any of those kind of services, hit me up. There's a contact form on the website. You can also find me on Instagram at johnwritesinc. I'm on Facebook, Jonathan McFadden. If you are listening to the show and you send me a Facebook request and we have absolutely no mutual friends, I cannot promise you that I will accept you. Please send me a message, but it's going to go into my new message request. So I may not see it for months because I don't check that thing regularly. So please don't be offended. It's a protection thing. I don't accept everybody. I'm also on LinkedIn. You know, if you want to talk about career stuff, if you want to talk about writing, like I said, I'm a professional writer. I write for a company. If you're a writer and you want to see kind of how we might be able to collaborate, work together, whatever the case may be, hit me up on LinkedIn. Also, Jonathan McFadden.
Awesome. Ladies, do y'all have anything to add before we conclude?
April, go ahead.
Oh, just my final words, just recapping all this good knowledge that we have gotten as women about this subject of dating in the church, just for women to make sure that you, just as the men prepare and they have their level of preparation as far as being able to take care of a wife, we need to make sure we're doing our mental work and our letting go of past relationships and not bringing things in that's going to harm a potential mate that had nothing to do with our hurts. Like, we really, women have to do the work. It's more than just being a church attendee, you know, a regular church attendee. That's the beginning to get you to a place where you're learning and being perfected by the gospel. And, you know, so I just hope the ladies heard the men and, you know, just be okay with where you're at until the Lord gives you more. That's it.
Yeah, that's good. Amen.
Sweet.
I would say to everyone that's listening, male and female, that are believers, that are single and ready to mingle and desiring marriage, I would say keep hope alive. I think, as Holly has said, today has been very inspiring. And while you're keeping hope alive, just to piggyback off of what April has said, find yourself like our brother Paul, being content with whatever state you find yourself in.
Amen. All right. This has been another episode of the Truth Revealed podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our guests, Jonathan and Torre, and Terrell almost that came on. Well, I don't know. We'll find out after this what happened.
But to you and your fiance, Jonathan.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Many blessings to you and your fiance.
Yes.
And she said hello, by the way. If you want to
Okay.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, y'all have an amazing evening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.